remediation bills, endangered species, and the Railroad Commission. We visit with Railroad Commissioner Jim Wright on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
NAPE is a proud sponsor of The Crude Truth. Be sure to register for the NAPE Expo 2024, February 7th through the 9th at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. Hurry and register today. NAPE, where deals happen.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry, committed to being good stewards of the environment and providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Oil and Gas Workers Association. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is that you are listening to or watching this episode of The Crude Truth. Thank you as always. Well, as we wrap up our year, we are just continuing to fight for the oil and gas industry and, more importantly, the economy of the great state of Texas. For my listeners out there that don't know, the oil and gas industry is over 30% of this state's economy, but also we help run the United States with the oil and gas that we provide here in Texas. And today, my guest is somebody that is fighting for that every day down at our state capitol here in Austin, Texas. My guest today is Railroad Commissioner Jim Wright. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Ray, for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. And we're here at my Real News Studio, South Lake Studio. And so thank you guys very much for making the trip. I do know y'all came into town for something else, and I just had to jump on the opportunity to get you here.
I'd have come on a special trip if you'd have called and invited me.
Well, thank you so much for that. How are you doing? And fortunately, right now, you're not gearing up for any type of elections or anything like that. So you are just working. So how's everything going right now?
Everything is going okay. It's been very busy for me there. But I think it's important that people know that the railroad commissioner carries a 6-year term, and there's 3 of us in total. So we are on the ballot every 2 years. Right. So I think Christy Craddock's on the ballot next this November, and hopefully everybody will be encouraged enough to go and support her. Okay. And I think that 2 years after that, then I'll be up on the ballot, and it seems like time for me. It's hard to believe I've been there almost 3 years now.
Wow! It
seems like yesterday for me because it's just so many things going on in the oil and gas industry, and the way we've had to kind of manage and talk about issues that people are concerned with since I've been here. There's been many.
Well, you mentioned that you've been there for 3 years. It does seem a lot longer, in a good way. As an operator, what you 3 have been able to do together has really, I feel like, and I may exaggerate a little bit, but y'all have taken those 3 years and really moved us up 30. There's just so many things that y'all have been doing, from keeping Texas cleaner, from the technology side of things, from both computer and oil and gas related drilling, that you guys have really left a positive mark in the oil and gas industry at the Railroad Commission.
Yeah, I mean, you just said a huge mouthful there. Yeah. We've done a lot of exciting stuff the past 3 years. You talked a little bit about our IT department, which is something I'm very, very proud of. And the state we put a lot of money into that program, and it has come a long way, especially in the past 3 years. And I think you're going to see vast more improvement to us coming through with IT. We had, through the legislative budget that was given to us this past legislature, gave us money to make sure that we're supporting that and hiring enough people that have the expertise to continue to grow that. So it makes it easier, I think, for people who want to know what's going on in the oil and gas industry, or those that are working inside the oil and gas industry, to actually get on the computer and you can find out pretty much everything you want to know right there, which creates a great level of transparency, which was something I was passionate about there.
Well, I think because of the lack of user friendliness that it used to be, and since none of these companies are sponsors of the Crude Truth, I'm not going to name them, but there's been software companies that were able to make it a lot more user friendly. But just this past Monday, I was at a restaurant in Dallas, and talking to a guy about some new wells that we're drilling, and we were able to use the Railroad Commission, pull it up, distance, this, that, when something was, the whole 9 yards, just right there on a laptop, like that.
I don't know if you remember, Ray, it wasn't very many years ago. If you had to go look up data on a certain formation, there literally was stuff in our file room that was still on burlap.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and I don't think people in the general public realize how many thousands and thousands and thousands of documents we had, not burlap, all of it, but microfiche and just paperwork that, right. When you look at the paperwork that we require in reporting from the industry, it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of hours. So I'm proud to say that IT starting to look at that more like we're creating programs that will catch things for us and flag things for us, so that we're not having to go through every piece of paper like we used to. So it's come a long way, and it continues to grow.
No, it's come a long way. And I mean, again, I've been in the industry since 2011, my dad since the 80s. But I mean, if you needed somebody to go into one of the oil libraries, I'm your guy.
Well, you know what it was.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of Christy Craddock. She was the one that started and led that charge. Starting back, I think it was over 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
she was very instrumental in us getting enough money to really help improve the program, and it just continues to improve. So I'm proud of that.
Well. Jim, for those of those out there that don't know you and your background, can you tell us about you and how you ended up running and winning for Railroad Commissioner?
Oh, certainly. I've said this many a time, and you can probably Google me and find out exactly what I'm fixing to say again. But I had an opportunity to go to college, and unfortunately, my mom and dad were in pretty bad shape about that time, and I had 3 scholarships that I could have gone to college on, but I kind of recognized that I really need to stay closer to home and help them some troubles they were having, and fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, right. There was one of the only 2 hazardous waste landfills decided to build a quarter mile south of the home that I grew up in, and so growing up there, we would get pretty much a prevalent south wind, and those were not real pleasant odors back in the 70s. No. So, when I graduated high school, I went down and I asked the manager, I said, I'm not a little kid that, you pass every day coming to work. And I said, it hadn't been real pleasant for me growing up and with you here. And I said, if anybody deserves a job, I do. And the guy said, you know what, you're right. So that started my career in the environmental business. And actually I was hired there for probably the first 5 years as contract labor, because they just didn't have a permanent position. So I'd work, a few months there, and then I'd have to go find something else to do and then come back, depending on how they built their cells and stuff. Yeah. But I think it was 86 when I got permanently hired, and it was something that really interested me, and I liked the environmental business. And it was actually 1991 when I thought, I'm smart enough now where I could probably do this on my own. So I started my first company in 1991, and just been developing there. And environmental just is not impactful on the oil and gas industry. You have refining, you have utility, you have government. Everybody's got some environmental issue. So, we've tried to cater to all of those fields in our business. But when the shale was discovered, naturally, there were a lot of issues that were coming out of that, and how people were going to be handling and looking at the environmental aspects and permits through the Railroad Commission, which, I would seem to get a lot of those phone calls going, hey, we need a permit to do something, and can you help us do that? And so it was during me going to the commission and sitting down and saying, this is the way I understand the permits are usually issued, but you're telling me now it's kind of different.
Yeah.
Where does it say that in the rule exactly? You know, and I guess they kind of thought I was not a real nice guy, so maybe sometimes, but, you know, what I saw, and again, I've said this publicly,
Yeah.
is, you know, our rules are a little bit like the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people read the Bible and they kind of get their own sense of what they just read.
Yes.
So, you know, as employees come to the commission and they're handed that, you know, it's kind of up to their interpretation on what that says. So, you know, I thought it would be really good to maybe offer to assist in writing guidance documents, at least on some of the rules.
Yeah.
I talked to one of the commissioners and they agreed. And I started a little task force that, you know, I put together, which was industry and some people from TCEQ and my chief of staff today, Christopher Hotchkiss, and another engineer. There's 9 people that we had put together and that I had assembled, and we got access to staff, but, you know, staff wasn't really at that time ready to make any changes to rules, and just didn't, you can just kind of tell they didn't have time to really communicate with us on guidance documents. So after about our 3rd or 4th meeting, the members of that task force looked at me and said, you know, we all have jobs.
Yeah.
We're all very busy. Are we wasting our time here? And they said, you know, and then I said, you know, it kind of seems that way. And, you know, I apologize. I thought we could maybe help, you know, not only the industry side, Texas side, and the commission, but, you know, and they said, well, you know, we really are passionate about this. We think this needs to be done. And Jim, would you consider running for the railroad commissioner spot that's coming up? And this was in July of 2019. And I looked at him, I said, no, but like hell no. And it was actually December 6th. I think the deadline for filing was on December 9th. And I had my wife and I were going to go somewhere for December 7th, which is our anniversary.
Okay.
And we were headed east, and Austin from our house is north. And I told her, I said, honey, do you mind if we swing through Austin? I want to do something before we go east.
Yeah.
She goes, well, that's kind of out of our way. What are you doing? I said, I think I'm going to register to run for railroad commissioner. She said, yeah. She said, you know, I always figured you'd kind of nut, Jim, but you are not. And, she said, but yeah, if you want to do that, go ahead. And
Yeah.
so that's how that got started. That's what brought me to the commission, and you know, and not being in politics at all. I mean, in my previous life, when I got there, I thought things would be really simple. You know, we're going to write these guidance documents. We're going to change some rules, and, you know, we're going to get these rules up to where technology is today, and adapt to the way things that are really being done. And the first thing that hits me is flaring.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was flaring, and then it was seismic activity. You know, it just seems like it just keeps going and going. And so all those issues, you know, have to be addressed, and they're important to me.
Yes.
And, you know, so there's been a lot of stuff that we've done in each one of those areas, but my forte has always been environmental, to answer your question. And
yes,
that's what I do.
Well, you know, I want to do my best because, you know, we had a lovely pre-meeting to kind of talk about some talking points, and I want to do my best, and we can tie every single one of them into what your background is in. Again, it's not in politics. It's not, it's not even, it's in oil and gas, but it's not even, it's, you're looking out for Mother Earth as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I think blesses me with oil all day long.
I think one of the things that's made me successful probably in my private life is it's not just looking out for Mother Earth, but it's how is you're looking out for Mother Earth and continuing, expanding, and improving our economic growth. And I feel like I've been really good at making both of those at least be side by side.
Yes.
You know, where you see today, a lot of that stuff that people are impressed upon it's almost unachievable.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to, this is a tough job. When I came here, I recognized 3 things that I really needed to consider on every decision that I make: safety, environmental, and the economic viability of the industries we regulate. So that, you know, when you think about everything that we do, those are the 3 thought processes that I put into that. Yeah. So, you know, when you're looking at trying to level that playing field to make sure that we are taking care of Mother Earth, but we're also achieving that economic success, those get complicated. And a lot of people don't try to understand that. But they don't realize without that economic success, we'd be in a lot worse shape than we would if we had some of the things that's concerning them on the environmental side.
Yeah. With everything on the environmental side, you mentioned flaring was one of the first issue that you had, but carbon capture is the hot button right now. And, what are you guys doing to help out with the carbon capture, and either, because it is hard for us operators, but what are y'all doing on y'all's end for that?
Well, we have, we've looked at a lot of the regulations that have been handed down from the federal side of things in the carbon capture market. And one of those is we have to apply for primacy to actually issue permits to have someone go out and capture and sequester carbon. So that's been a huge process for us. It's a very complicated document to work with the EPA on. And in fact, I've been holding meetings with them pretty much on a monthly basis for the past year about getting our primacy and making that. And, if anybody's an expert in injecting and securely injecting and sequestering something, it's Texas.
Yeah.
We know that probably better than anybody else in the world. So, I think there's been some give and take with the EPA. The EPA is certainly, I don't consider them as much of an expert as we do here in Texas. So that, they've learned some from us and we've learned some things from them, and it's been kind of a give and take, but it's actually been a decent relationship that I didn't think would be decent at first, but it has turned out to be, and I'm really confident that we will get that primacy.
Yes.
And once that's done, then I think there'll be advantages, because there are some money that's available to encourage that, and that's what the intent was, and I think it will help our industry tremendously.
I'm glad you brought up the EPA, and this wanted to kind of pick, just since you mentioned it, and I'm glad to hear that we have a good relationship. Not too long ago we had it, and I'll be a little direct. Two Democrat Texas congressmen send letters to the EPA saying for them to take over regulating the oil and gas industry in Texas, if I'm correct. And I just think that was probably one of the most hogwash, lack of better words, things ever, when, you mentioned that we lead it. Other countries come here to see how it is that we are safe, we regulate, and we protect the environment. They come and take notes from what we do here. So, I was a little worried about that, just, outside, as I like to say, hey, I'm not a politician. I'm on the outside watching TV.
Those letters were developed from people that really don't know all the aspects of what these natural resources that we're blessed with here in Texas really provide for Texas. Right. I think a lot of people sometimes jump on different bandwagons because they feel like that's kind of the consensus, that everybody's thinking, and maybe that's more for their own personal gain. I think sometimes. So, I think that again, I felt like it would be important for the commission and Region 6 EPA to develop a really good relationship. And one of the things that seems to be forefront on their mind was that we figured out a way to inform the public of what that program is going to look like and how's it going to affect them, and working hand in hand with us to do that. So that's been kind of the major thing that their concerns have been on. Because I think, in talking with the EPA, they recognize we do know how to put stuff back into the ground. If you look at our produced water that comes alongside oil and gas today, yes, just in the Permian alone, we're almost at 20 million barrels a day that we've got to put back into the ground. And that's not easy to do when you're looking at that volume and that I'm going to call it that small space, not really that small, but that is a lot of water. And there's issues that come with that too. There are issues that we've been addressing, we're continuing to address. And, I'm excited to say that we've created some pilot programs with some of the industry now that's looking at alternative uses. We're already using a lot of that water to refrac with. We've got pilot programs now that are developed to go out and provide irrigation to enhance natural vegetation. There's a lot of exciting stuff. I had a company approach me the other day that says, look, we've got a part of Texas that's really hurting for industrial type water right now. We think we could treat that to an industrial level and utilize it in that community to benefit them. So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. But that when you talk about what those letters said, that we're not responsible, they couldn't miss the mark further.
Yes.
It's just things like I had to learn when I came here. They don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
They're complex, and it takes a lot of thought process, and a lot of work and a lot of technology to make these things work correctly.
Yeah. You talk about complex and a lot of thought process. One thing that I do know is complex here is the orphan wells or the abandoned wells that are here in Texas. Unfortunately, for whatever reasons, operators who are responsible for those, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, they just walk away from the fields and they leave those there. And I think that is a very difficult situation for you guys to be in, but y'all are doing a great job on taking care of it for what we can. We do have a lot of wells here, and you guys are plugging over 1,000 wells a year. And is there anything else that you would like to see us do? Maybe I'll throw a curveball as an operator, other than not walk away from them. But it's like, how can we help you guys out to mitigate those orphan wells in a way?
Ray, one of the things I consider a company like yours, and one thing that's a strong passion of mine is the smaller guy, right? To me, it's a smaller guy that'll go to the local community. He'll eat at those restaurants. He'll stay at those hotels. He buys from those hardware stores. He hires those local people. So to me, they drive our economy a lot better than I look at larger producers actually.
Right.
But those guys inherit and they get into the business from the larger guys. And there's a thing on a life called life of a well, which is always measured on what we refer to as an economic life, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you're a big corporation, you got lots of employees, what's economic life of a well? It's not the same as your economic life of the well, being a smaller producer. So, typically what happens to encourage people, smaller people that really have the biggest impact on our economy to stay in the business, a lot of people say, well, you need to increase the bond, make bigger bonds. Well, I've just thrown the little guy out when I do that.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah. I think when you look at what really happens, the larger corporations say, okay, we're down to, I'm just going to use a number, 15 MMBTU a day of natural gas, or 50 MMBTU of whatever the number is.
Yeah.
And that well is no longer economically successful for us. You come along and say, man, at 50 MMBTU a day, I can make money with that well. You buy that well. And maybe your threshold's 10. Okay. But there's always somebody out there that's going to impact the local community that can feel like they can take that well and do something with it. But there always is a real economic end to that well. And that's what we're seeing happen in the industry today. But I think giving the concerns in greenhouse gas emissions, we've got a kind of new breath of life here to address these wells other than using taxpayer funds on the ones that get walked away from.
Yeah.
In the carbon credit market. And I'm really excited about that. And it's been something we've looked at really hard the past year and a half. And we're doing a lot of research and trying to see how we can utilize that carbon credit market and encourage that carbon credit market to get a return on some of that, so we can either stretch those dollars out or get it in such a way that final guy that has no more economic life knows he can fall back and look at carbon credits to actually plug the well. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in that arena right now.
There really is. And the other thing in that arena, not necessarily the carbon capture, but was a bill that didn't make it, but they were the restim bill. And that you could go back into these old wells and restimulate them, and you get some form of a tax credit. It didn't make it, but I just wanted to mention it real quick because, hey, we got about another 18 months before the next deal. So if any of my listeners out there that are operators have any questions about that, reach out to me or the Railroad Commission, because you talk about the little cities, and that was something we did talk about in pre-meeting, was that they get the benefits of all these older wells. When we come in, we stay at the hotels, eat at the restaurants, buy their gasoline. And just one well right now, one shallow well is $1 million. And the majority of that, if you use the local driller, the local gasoline guy, diesel guy,
Yeah.
the local mud guy, that all goes into that community.
Yeah, I see that, and that's my passion. That's what I want to keep in the oil and gas industry, especially. To me, it's those type of things that make us successful in Texas. The bigger guys, they're needed. I love them coming to Texas.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they buy in gross amounts. So they may be buying from a foreign country on supplies that they need, where a smaller guy is going to go to the Ace Hardware and he's going to buy what he needs. But when you look at the carbon credit opportunity, like I said earlier, I think that's going to be a really good way of maybe us looking at potentially abolishing that inheritance of orphan wells for taxpayer responsibility. So I think there's a lot of promise in that.
That could be very, very unique. One of the things I wanted to talk about was, the bigger guys, and I want to lead into it. The bigger guys, if there's an environmental issue, they can go hire 6 biologists tomorrow. They can afford to wait 6 months to start drilling again, and then prove why it's okay to drill 6 months later. However, the small guys like us, if there's something going on environmentally, or right now, which I'll lead into, endangered species, we're done. It's like, go find a new spot to drill. We're not doing that. And so you've got a lizard in West Texas, and then also the rice discovery that I want to touch on.
I think it's really funny because evidently the only endangered species in this whole entire world happen to live around just oil and gas operations.
I've never thought about it.
I mean, that's what I'm seeing today.
Yeah.
You just brought it up. We've got a prairie chicken and we got a lizard that's out in West Texas right now that, to be honest with you, where our activities are, that's one of the things we always look for. Is you don't really want to go head first into saying, okay, I'm going to put all my operations where there's an endangered species. So I don't think that's something that entices us anywhere.
No.
So when I heard a report the other day where they said, we went out and we tried to find the lizard where the oil and gas industry is, and we couldn't find one lizard. Well, yeah, because we don't drill where the lizard is. Kind of the same with the prairie chicken, and then the latest. I think these are assaults, to be honest with you, and
Okay.
but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
The latest thing is this new whale called a rice whale
Okay.
that was just found, and immediately got put on the endangered species list.
Oh.
And just dramatically enough, or more specifically enough, its habitat is from Florida through the Gulf Coast down to Brownsville, about 30 miles offshore. That's its habitat. So now the concern is our exports that we're having,
Mm-hmm.
may actually hit one of these wells somehow, or the propeller may endanger it. So they're looking at their movements that they think their movements are, and they're looking at restricting us and shipping,
Wow.
exporting material out of the country.
Jim, I thought you said during our pre-production, I thought you were saying rice well, W-E-L-L, but it's a whale,
Whale, yes.
W-H-E-L-E.
Correct.
And that opens up a whole other can for a whole other topic on another day, that they are worried about a whale on the Gulf Coast that just happens to stretch the entire
Yes.
Gulf of Mexico,
Mhm.
pert near where what's rich in that area is
Yeah,
all oil.
and from what I've seen from reports, they're saying that this whale's movement is particularly more at night. So they're already talking about ships can't travel at night through that zone. So I look at this all the time and I think, who's promoting all this stuff and why are they promoting it? Because everything that you're doing to us here domestically is really just kind of shutting us down, and you're improving other foreign adversaries, I call them, or enemies,
Yes.
improvement in their economy, and I don't understand that. And like I told you earlier, I'm not really a politician, but I scratch my head a lot on some of the decisions that people are making today.
Well, you mentioned, adversaries, and this is totally off subject. I love to go fishing. I love the Texas coast. I heard a report that the king fishing was not very good this year, and that there is a Russian Ned, there's something I heard. Off the coast of Cuba, that pert near stretches 3 miles between two ships, and it's just catching fish all day long. I heard that. So you talk about, adversaries doing stuff. I can't agree more with what you're saying.
Where's Greenpeace and those guys that got the boats? I would think they would be out there on top of that one.
Well, you talk about where's Greenpeace, where are they at? My good friend David Blackman, he's been writing about the whales and, where are they at? He said it so astute Turley that, oil, gasoline saved the whales at the turn of the century when gasoline was discovered.
It certainly did.
Okay. So it's going to be gasoline and oil that saves them again when we can stop building these wind farms out in the ocean.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
I think you've seen a lot of studies in that regard too, and the environmental impacts that's going to be having on us. And, that's a whole different subject that I guess I could talk about for hours, but, I think people need to really, really look at what's actually going on today. And, if it's concerning you, I guess the biggest thing that I could say is learn all you can about it and then form your opinion. Don't pick somebody you think you can follow that's right. Check them.
Yeah. But I like that right there. If something concerns you, learn all you can. And that's the crude truth. There it is. There it is. That's the crude truth. Jim, you guys at the Railroad Commission are more accessible than I think people really know. For listeners, for viewers that are watching, how can they get a hold of your office or the Railroad Commission office?
If you have a cell phone, and you have Google on it, just type in my name. It'll tell you about 6 million times before you can get off of Google how to get a hold of me there.
Okay. Oh man. Well, Jim, again, I just cannot thank you enough for coming on. I know you're slammed. You're in for the Texas Alliance of Indigenous Producers. You're speaking there tomorrow with Congressman Chip Roy, if I'm correct.
Well, I think I'm not real sure that is still occurring or not, because of a little upset we just had yesterday.
I heard a rumor about something that happened. The day that we recorded happened after some stuff that happened in.
So they may want me to extend my speech tomorrow. I'm not real sure what the.
Well, you better charge them extra then, because I can't thank you enough for coming on.
No, thank you guys for having me.
And again, I just want to highlight that you three have done so many great things, and with you having the environmental background, we care. And I've said this before. I'm an Eagle Scout. I called it Mother Earth. It gives us the oil, and I'm a conservative, and most oil and gas men and women are.
Correct.
And so we care about the environment. And you coming from an environmental background, it's your duty.
I'm very proud and lucky to have the fellow commissioners that I have. I think we have made a great team, and I can't think of anybody else that I would rather be working with than who I have today. And I want to just say thank you so much for letting me come on. The more we can talk about these issues, I think those are important for the people to realize what's really going on in our world today.
Well, Jim, again, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you again to all my listeners out there. Please and please leave 5-star reviews and ask any questions you want. And if there are any that you want to ask me, I'll ask Jim and his great counterparts over here. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next time on another episode of The Crude Truth.
Again, thank you to our sponsors, LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Exec Crew, Oil and Gas Workers Association, Pecos Country Operating.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.